let's get started. Welcome everyone to the 12-Step Big Book Workshop. My name is Lisa, and I have been a student of the 12 Steps method of recovery for decades. I began with Alateen, added Coda, Al-Anon, and OA. And I'm so glad you're all here tonight. We're going to make some headway in our recovery and our fourth step work. The only requirement for attendance is an honest desire to stop using addictions. We are not allied with any specific fellowship. We wish simply to be helpful to those who are afflicted. All right, so please join me in the set-aside prayer with the willingness to have an open mind and an open heart, with a gift of release as we tackle our fourth step. So if you'd like to join in, whether muted or not, please feel free. Higher power, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my step 4, and my resentments, so that I may have a new experience of freedom in my life, and freedom from my resentments, and freedom to co-create with you. So here we are at step 4, and step 4 is the foundation of the 12-step recovery program because it requires a thorough, fearless moral inventory of ourselves. As the first concrete action toward abstinence, this self-examination helps you uncover the root causes of addiction, and it shifts your focus away from blaming others. So by identifying recurring negative patterns like resentment and fear, we gain the deep self-awareness necessary for the change we want. Ultimately, this honest self-assessment provides the essential groundwork required to build an entirely new way of living and successfully navigate all future steps. So we focus deeply on resentments by examining the first component that Bill outlines in the Big Book, followed by fear, and finally we'll address the sexual conducts. These 3 core categories represent the root sources of internal and interpersonal tensions. Unresolved, this deep-seated tension drives us back to our addictive behaviors, because it's a familiar way to self-soothe and escape ourselves and our feelings. So by breaking down these specific areas, we uncover the exact emotional triggers that fuel the cycle of addiction. And resentment serves as a fatal poison, with Bill explicitly stating, "It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness." For an addict, harboring these feelings is a spiritual sickness that blocks access to our higher power, leading to relapse and fatal consequences. The term itself describes resentment or refeeling the past and the pain of harms. So by repeatedly replaying these grievances, real or imagined, an addict becomes mentally and emotionally trapped, shutting themselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. Without this spiritual connection, the insanity of addiction returns and we use again. Ultimately, holding on to resentments acts as a self-inflicted poison that consumes the addict with bitterness while leaving the people they resent mostly unaware or unaffected. To help uncover where these grievances originate, should is often the key word to identifying underlying expectations. So whenever you hear yourself saying, "I should," "they should," "the government should," that's a flag that you need to look at it, which you'll see on the worksheets. A lot of them have the word should right in there. All 12 steps are designed to help us navigate fear, making the fourth step, the searching and fearless moral inventory, essential to understanding it. Because fear is a powerful hidden emotion, we are naturally reluctant to admit it. Yet the Big Book warns that fear is a corrosive thread running through an addict's life, driving self-destructive behaviors, straining our relationships, and fueling the perpetual cycle of addiction. By confronting and understanding these fears rather than avoiding them, addicts can break this destructive cycle and build a solid foundation for recovery. Closely tied to this process is the danger of resentment. The Big Book explicitly states that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. For an addict, holding on to these feelings is a fatal spiritual sickness that cuts them off from a higher power and paves the way to relapse. The word resentment itself translates to resentiment, meaning to repeatedly re-feel the pain of the past harms. So by constantly replaying real or imagined grievances, addicts become mentally and emotionally trapped, shutting themselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. Without this spiritual connection, the insanity of addiction returns and we use again. Ultimately, examining where the word should appears can uncover the true source of our resentments. When Bill W. discussed inappropriate sex, he referred to his own history of adultery and promiscuity that occurred during and after his early sobriety. Although he never published a formal definition, the context of his life and the experiences of others in A suggested it meant behaviors endangering relationships, sobriety, and well-being. Heavy use consumption can significantly impact sexual behavior and exacerbate hypersexuality. For people battling addiction, alcohol abuse or any addiction, and risky sexual behavior are deeply connected. Drinking heavily lowers a person's judgment and inhibitions. This can lead to dangerous sexual situations. In turn, the stress, emotional pain, or guilt from these risky encounters often drives the person to drink more or use more, trapping them in an endless cycle. So Bill viewed human instincts as God-given and necessary for survival, but recognized they turn into destructive forces when misdirected. In the 12 steps and 12 traditions, he identified 3 core instincts: sex for reproduction, security for stability, and society for belonging. When these drives exceed their proper bounds, people become battlegrounds for excessive desires. For addicts, this misdirection is the primary struggle. While basic instincts usually preserve life, an addict's obsessive using defies self-preservation. These instincts collide, causing damage to themselves and others, and manifest as overblown ego, pride, and greed. Ultimately, this is a disease driven by the relentless demand for more of whatever your issue is. And Bill viewed anger not as an isolated issue, but as the outward expression of basic human instincts run amok. While he noted that normal individuals might afford themselves the dubious luxury of justified anger, for addicts, it was a poison that inevitably led them to relapse. He directly linked these unbridled instincts and the ensuing anger to profound selflessness, identifying self-centeredness as the core problem. And Bill viewed human instincts as essential for survival, but believed that they became distorted in addicts, causing excessive behaviors. Outlined in the 12 steps and 12 traditions, he identified the social, sexual, and security instincts, explaining that fear arises when these drives collide with rational morality or spinning out of control. Bill observed that fear is not a problem on its own, but a symptom of a deeper spiritual deficit caused by our instincts on rampage. In his writings, such as those compiled in As Bill Sees It, he explained that an unreasonable fear that our natural drives will go unsatisfied drives us to covet the possessions of others and lust for power or sex. When we make excessive demands for attention and love, it produces unhappiness, unhealthy relationships, and a fear of abandonment. Similarly, the unreasonable fear that financial or material needs will not be met damages our security instinct, frequently resulting in greed, envy, and sloth. Ultimately, he concluded that these deep-seated fears act as the root cause of many other character defects. So Bill promoted rigorous honesty as a core principle for recovery, requiring individuals to face the truth about their selfish and dishonest actions. Through the Alcoholics Anonymous 4-step inventory, the program's instructions to make a searching and fearless moral inventory directly addresses this by forcing a clear-eyed look at the manifestation of one's selfishness, dishonesty, and delusions. Bill saw the solution as a spiritual one. By turning one's will over to a higher power, an alcoholic could be relieved of the bondage of self, which was the root cause of their corrupted instincts. As recovery progresses, honesty is meant to become a daily practice, moving from the difficult initial admissions to a constant conscious state of mind. Bill's views on honesty are complicated by his personal history. Despite his program's emphasis on honesty, Bill notes that he had affairs and was unfaithful to his wife. This reflects his belief that the journey toward honesty is an ongoing process for everyone, including himself. In Bill's view, unchecked instincts directly cause resentments because they are rooted in selfishness and expectation for how others should behave. He saw resentments as the number one offender for addicts, acting as a spiritual disease that blocks them from a higher power and can lead to relapse. Bill identifies several core instincts that, when they become unregulated, fuel resentments. Resentment often arises when these instincts are threatened, such as the security, the pocketbook. We become resentful when our financial security or ambitions are threatened. So for example, being angry that a computer breaks is a resentment tied to our financial instinct. Then we have our social and personal relations or ambitions. Our social standing and personal relationships, including sexuality, can become a source of resentment when our desires for attention or prestige are out of control. And that can damage relationships and cause a lot of conflict. When the sexual instinct is excessively demanding, it can lead to hurt feelings and resentments. So the 4th step focuses on a searching and fearless moral inventory to uncover the link between instincts and resentments. And this process reveals that our resentments are not primarily about what others have done to us. Instead, the inventory shows that in almost every case, our own selfishness and self-centered demands for the satisfaction of our instincts are the underlying cause of our anger. Bill's view on how to address this issue emphasizes taking responsibility for one's own role in the resentment. So the solution is not to demand that others change, but to change one's own defective responses. So as far as fear goes, according to Bill, fear acts as the chief activator of our defects and is an evil, corroding thread running through people's lives. It causes individuals to make rigid demands on life for things like prestige, security, and important relationships. When these demands are threatened, fear invariably powers anger, aggression, and resentment. Consequently, when conducting a step 4 inventory, individuals will find that every resentment fundamentally stems from a threat to something deeply valued, such as self-esteem, ambitions, or our emotional security. Bill viewed shame as a major driver of the spiritual malady underlying addiction, operating as an underlying force that feeds the self-centeredness and resentment that ultimately triggers our relapses. While not explicitly detailed as a primary cause in the Big Book, his writings illustrate shame as the source of painful feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness. To overcompensate for these feelings, addicts often develop an inflated ego or pride, which functions as self-will run riot. This hypersensitive ego is easily wounded, directly producing resentment. Furthermore, the painful nature of shame causes addicts to withdraw, fostering isolation that prevents meaningful connection and reinforces the distorted thinking. So instead of taking responsibility, shame-based thinking leads to self-pity, which Bill famously deemed a bar to all spiritual progress, causing the addict to project their inner turmoil outward and blame others, which forms the ultimate foundation of the resentment. And then Bill linked the false self or the ego to the destructive nature of resentment, describing it as the number one offender for addicts. This spiritual disease stems from selfishness and the impossible demands of the ego, as I refer to as the self-will run riot. Driven by a desperate search for security, approval, and control, this false self creates an exaggerated, demanding version of who a person believes they should be. When the world inevitably fails to meet these unrealistic expectations, it produces frustration and pain. Consequently, as long as individuals remain victimized by false dependencies on others for their emotional satisfaction, they will continuously experience resentment. Ultimately, this anger arises whenever the ego feels threatened in areas like self-esteem, relationships, ambitions, or finances. When these demands go unmet, the ego feels victimized and holds the grudge. So when we reflect on the false self, it's helpful to recall the cartoon of Lost Lisa, which we'll be making our own cartoons next week. So get excited for that. So looking closely, you will see that the chains are not even actually connected to anything in reality. She seems bound only because she is the one holding the chains. So by clinging to the fears, she becomes a victim of her own delusions. While this captivity is not factual, it feels profoundly true to her. Inspired by this concept, I completed the fourth step of recovery to identify my invisible chains that I had wrapped all around myself and all the delusions that robbed me of my peace, my freedom, and decades of my life. So this is how it all begins. We have the ego deflation at depth, and we have to look at our development. And our shared biological foundations shape the genetic blueprints that define our physical and behavioral traits. For each of us, this underlying biology, interwoven with personal heritage and family culture, acts as the driving force behind the instincts that determine our survival. We're all shaped by a fundamental biological foundation that dictates our genetic makeup. And this deeply ingrained physical and historical heritage forms the cornerstone of our stories and our family's culture. Ultimately, it is this unique intersection of biology and ancestral experience that has determined our core survival instincts. So our cultural background and family environment shape the masks and the personas we present to the world. Growing up within an inescapable foundational family dynamic, those early cultural influences dictated how we react to life. Recognizing this, we realize that without active awareness of these ingrained patterns, we're bound to repeat the same dysfunctional behaviors. Family dynamics establish the original blueprint for how you experience love, safety, and conflict. And when these dynamics force the creation of the false self, they directly distort your adult relationships in several distinct ways. The first one is trust and vulnerability becomes the need to have your mask put on. So we hide our true feelings to avoid rejection. And we're hyper independent. We refuse help because relying on others feels unsafe. We feel fear of abandonment. We expect people to leave if they see that we have flaws. We have distorted relationship patterns and anxious pleasing of other people. That makes us chronically overcompromise our boundaries to keep the peace. We attract familiar chaos. We unconsciously choose partners who recreate our childhood stresses. Emotional withdrawal will shut us down or push people away during minor conflicts. We have communication barriers that are passive aggressive. So we express anger indirectly because open confrontation feels too dangerous. And then we have mind reading. We constantly scan our partner's moods for signs of hidden emotion and anger. We have guilt and shame that we feel personally responsible for everyone else's negative emotions. So my identity and behavior today are the direct product of my education, the neighborhood I grew up in, and the social circles I hung out in. The information I absorbed from people around me, alongside my psychological and emotional reactions to those environments, form the lens through which I see the world. For better or worse, this entire compilation of early life experiences shapes exactly how I behave and navigate my life. Over time, our true self becomes deeply buried under countless defensive layers, leaving us disconnected from who we genuinely are and obscuring our missed potential. The entire purpose of step 4 is to confront and dismantle these false facades. By breaking away from these protective masks, we can finally uncover and embrace our authentic identity. So in the big book, Bill asks readers to identify and analyze their self-centeredness, famously stating on page 62 that selfishness and self-centeredness are the absolute root of the problem. This core self-centeredness ultimately serves as the root of human suffering. The inevitable fruit of that underlying tree is a primal survival instinct to fight and an adversarial drive that ultimately translates directly into deep-seated resentments or fears, which directs us to run and hide to protect ourselves from harm. We also frequently attempt to conceal our deep-seated inadequacies through inappropriate sexual behaviors. These actions can become a major barrier to personal agency and addiction recovery by generating destructive cycles of shame, fracturing healthy relationships, and acting as a substitute dependency. Furthermore, sex is often used as a maladaptive coping mechanism to numb or process unresolved trauma. This destructive pattern becomes especially damaging when the sexual activity turns compulsive, carries high risks, or remains entirely detached from genuine emotional intimacy. These are the three components of the step 4 inventory, and we need to add one more. We have to add guilt, a concept that is not framed in the big book in the exact same way we use it in the modern culture. Guilt acts as a major obstacle to power and addiction recovery by trapping individuals in a paralyzing cycle of self-punishment and powerlessness. While guilt is technically a feeling of remorse for a specific action, it easily dissolves into pervasive shame, which is the deeply damaging belief that one is inherently a bad person. This destructive cycle ultimately undermines a person's sense of self-worth, agency, and fundamental belief that they deserve a better way of life. Dishonesty and secrets serve as fundamental obstacles to power and addiction recovery by directly driving denial, blocking self-awareness, and shattering the trust required for a strong support network. The core of addiction relies on a deceptive loop of justifying harmful actions to oneself and others, which systematically traps the individual in a state of powerlessness. Because addiction thrives on denial, secrets are actively used to hide the true scale of substance abuse from loved ones and from the person struggling. Ultimately, the foundational step of recovery demands admitting powerlessness, a breakthrough that remains entirely impossible without first confronting the absolute truth of the problem. Shame operates as a massive obstacle to addiction recovery by fostering a negative self-identity, promoting isolation, and sabotaging motivation, which ultimately strips individuals of their personal power and perpetuates a vicious cycle of addiction. Unlike guilt, which focuses on a specific action such as I did something bad, shame is a deeply painful personal belief that I am bad, that fundamentally undermines a person's core sense of self-worth. The intense fear of judgment driven by this shame is one of the primary reasons individuals with addiction avoid seeking help. Even after someone successfully enters recovery, unaddressed shame remains a significant threat to long-term sobriety. To reclaim their power, we have to actively transition away from internal worthlessness and move toward self-compassion and acceptance. So, an unchanging mindset keeps an individual deeply trapped in denial, which is a key defining feature of addiction. The adage, change your thoughts and you change your world, underscores how your mind directly dictates your experiences, emotions, actions, and the overall reality that we create. By consciously shifting away from negative thought patterns and actively cultivating optimism and gratitude, you can transform your perspective, unlock hidden possibilities, and positively alter your life circumstances. Because thoughts are the very foundation of your perceptions, negative thinking quickly cements limiting beliefs, whereas positive thinking fosters a greater capacity for opportunity and success. When you build awareness around your internal dialogue and choose to think differently, you fundamentally alter how you react to external circumstances, and that enables you to make healthier, more constructive choices. So Bill describes step 4 as making a searching and fearless moral inventory of oneself to discover the underlying flaws that have caused failure and blocked a vital connection to the higher power. Using a commercial inventory as a metaphor, he likens this process to a business taking stock to identify and get rid of damaged or unsaleable goods without any self-deception. The process requires a thorough, honest examination of one's own fears, resentments, and character defects to understand the absolute root of one's problems. To avoid fooling ourselves about true values or simply focusing on the most obvious flaws, the search must be done without fear and with rigorous honesty. Ultimately, the primary goal of this inventory is to identify the specific defects of character that have led to past failures, successfully clearing the spiritual blockages caused by resentment and fear, so that a person can finally connect with their higher power. And this inventory process helps expose the false self by revealing specific character defects deeply rooted in our egos. Because the false self is fundamentally dishonest, addicts often bury these defects under thick layers of self-justification. But step 4 forces us to look at ourselves squarely in the eye and stop fooling ourselves with a phony list of superficial flaws. A key element of this process involves listing the resentments and asking why a person is angry, which frequently reveals that anger stems from a threatened ego, specifically when self-esteem, security, or ambitions are interfered with. Through the psychological mechanism of projection, the addict often sees their own hidden faults in others, but the inventory shifts the focus from blaming outside sources to examining one's own part in the situation. Bill identified fear as a core manifestation of this false self, noting that fear often keeps addicts stagnant, preferring to suffer in predictable ways rather than take a chance on something new. During the inventory, these fears will be examined, not to apologize for them, but to ask a higher power to remove them and grant us the courage that we need. And finally, the false self drives the addict to be relentlessly self-seeking, always struggling to either dominate at the top of the heap or hide safely underneath it, rather than relating to others as equals, a behavior that ultimately blocks true connection and breeds intense isolation. On page 64, Bill states that our liquor is but a symptom. It's a powerful truth that we have been echoing throughout our workshop. While addiction is undoubtedly a massive problem, it is ultimately not the root problem itself. Rather, substance abuse is merely a symptom of a much deeper underlying issue. Recognizing this serves as Bill's direct invitation to step forward into deeper self-discovery. He provides us with precise instructions to analyze our lives so we can get down to the actual causes and conditions of our illness. This is exactly why our workshop slide on instincts, reactions, and emotions carries so much weight. It bypasses surface level behaviors and digs underneath to target the basic biology driving these core reactions. And Bill asserts that our difficulties stem from our own actions, as the core of our issue lies in selfishness and self-centeredness, fueled by fear and delusion. This rampant self-will compels individuals to behave in ways that inflict harm on themselves and others. When negative outcomes occur, people often find themselves suffering, frequently unaware of how their past choices contributed to these situations. According to Bill, the spiritual aspect of our disease is our utter self-centeredness, which fosters the illusion that the world revolves around our own desires and needs. This self-centeredness is often propelled by 100 forms of fear, including fears of loss or failure, which drive self-seeking behaviors and self-pity. To cope with these fears, we may resort to actions that step on the toes of our fellows. When others respond to or circumstances shift, they too suffer the repercussions of their own poor decisions. The path to healing involves change, and this realization is a crucial element of recovery. The solution lies in recognizing these self-centered patterns through the step 4 inventory, and then relinquishing self-will by seeking guidance from our higher power. So Bill believed the spiritual malady is the foundational core of addiction, characterized by an inward state of restlessness, disconnection, and chronic discomfort when sober. If left untreated, this internal misery creates an unbearable emotional pressure that eventually triggers the mental obsession, driving an addict back to using as a desperate form of self-medication, even when they consciously desire to stay clean. The spiritual malady is a fundamental state of misalignment with oneself, with others, and with our higher power, manifesting as a collection of painful, emotional, and behavioral symptoms. So at its core, the driving force behind the symptoms of the spiritual malady is total selfishness and self-centeredness, which you guys are probably sick of hearing those two words. As the big book explains on page 62, this deep-seated egoism is the absolute root of our troubles. If an addict fails to continuously smash and re-smash their ego through the daily, lifelong application of all the 12 steps, simply sitting in meetings and staying physically sober or abstinent is not enough. Without a spiritual shift, a person enters the miserable, undrunk state of a dry drunk, where selfish and ego-driven behaviors keep the inward unmanageability of the spiritual malady fully alive. Eventually, this internal friction forces the mind to crave the false sense of ease and comfort found in a drink, drug, or process addiction. Alternately, a blind ego can deceptively convince an addict that everything is perfect, much like Fred's story in chapter 3, where he drank when there wasn't a single cloud on the horizon. Therefore, we must honestly evaluate the current condition of our inner lives and look for these dangerous symptoms within ourselves. Page 62 reminds us that, above everything, we must be entirely rid of the selfishness and ego, or it will ultimately kill us. So when we maintain our spiritual fitness, we live in a state of flow, protected by a spiritual shield that insulates us from the mental obsession that otherwise drives us to relapse. In chapter 5, Bill makes it very clear that each component of the inventory requires us to write out specific events to uncover our hidden blocks. This is not a casual process or exercise. It's about remembering old grudges, and it's not simply copy and paste job from a previous inventory list. The true purpose of the fourth step is to search your soul deeply and fearlessly in the present moment, allowing you to honestly identify and expose the root sources of your current resentments and anger. Just a reminder, we are looking for the big shark bites, the big ones, the big pains in our butts, not the little tiny mosquito bites. Although they are annoying, they aren't the issue. We all have our own tolerance levels. My shark bite may be, much bigger than the next guy, or it might be really small compared to the next guy. But we don't need to compare it. We just need to know when we get that really strong reaction about an angry situation or a resentment, those are the ones that we really want to tackle. So as you complete your fourth step worksheets, you're going to eventually realize that you can replace any name or circumstance in that inventory, and the underlying dynamic will remain exactly the same, because the central actor in every single play is ourselves. And this realization exposes our core self-centeredness. We routinely place ourselves at the very center of the universe and then wonder why we are constantly angry at the world, only to discover that we are actually angry at ourselves. While this truth might feel disappointing at first, especially if you desperately wanted to blame someone else, the reality is incredibly empowering. If the problem were entirely outside of you, you would have absolutely no control over fixing it. But because the root of the problem lies within ourselves and our thoughts and behaviors, we possess direct options to address, dismantle, and eliminate them. We are completely incapable of changing other people, and no one else can force a change in us. Real, lasting character transformation can only be achieved by ourselves, powered by the continuous support of a higher power and the active practice of the 12 steps. So, lost Lisa, lost in her chains and trapped in the bondage of her own suffering, she remains a prisoner because she is the one unknowingly holding on to her own confinement. If you look closely, again, you'll see the chains are not attached to anything. She just, in her mind, believes that they are. And it's delusional thinking. While these delusional fears are not factual reality, they remain completely true to her experience until she discovers otherwise. This is precisely why we execute a fourth step, to expose these proverbial chains and dismantle the delusional thoughts we once wrapped around ourselves like armor. Though these defense mechanisms may have been necessary for past survival, we now find ourselves trapped by their presence and blind to the ongoing destruction that they're causing. So for next week, I want you all to tap into your creative side and produce your own drawing, sketch, artwork using any medium that you want. And I want you to come up with your lost Lisa or your pathetic Herbie caricature. Infuse your artwork with enough detail to accurately express the emotional weight, the suffering, and internal chaos you experience in your life before entering recovery. And if you've done this exercise with me before, update your picture if it needs updating to your new recovery level. So I'm going to go over the column with you guys to show you how to get through these. So column 1 is the who. We list the person that we feel the anger, hurt, or resentfulness towards. And this can include people, places, things, institution, the police, the government, the president, 10 commandments. Don't hold back. Write down your honest feelings, even if they seem unreasonable at the time. When you think you're done, try to think of more people. The goal is to be as thorough as possible. So then we have column 2, which is the what. And as a reminder, they're not numbered in the big book like this, but I have numbered them in my big book to remind me. So for each name in the first column, write down the specific event or action that caused your resentment. And be very specific about what happened. We're not going to write a whole story, but use accurate words to describe your situation. And try to stay away from being vague, because the more specific we can be with our information, the more information we'll get out of this exercise. So for example, instead of my boss was unfair, you could write, my boss gave my project to a coworker who was less qualified. So that gives you a little more to bite and grab onto. So then column 3 is how it has affected you. And we identify how the situation affected us emotionally or spiritually. And that can include, your self-esteem. Did it make you feel ashamed, inadequate, worthless? And then we have the security. Did it make you feel financially, emotionally, or physically unsafe? Did it threaten your goals or dreams? Did it interfere with your relationships with others? Did it negatively impact your sexual or romantic lifestyle? So that's the effect of what your resentment is about. And this is how it would look if you were looking at the whole page. So at the top, we put the person at the top. When I resented Drew, and the reason I resent is for lying and manipulating me to their ego needs. That's what they did. That's what I'm resentful about. And then we go down and we fill in the columns. Self-esteem, what is my deep belief about who I am? Well, I am an open and honest, kind, accepting wife who handles the truth, whether good or bad, with grace. Now, we really want to expound on the who I am, that deep belief, because those are the beliefs that are buried so deep that sometimes we don't even know that we believe that about ourselves. And what also ends up happening is we push that goodness that we have deeper and deeper over time as our addiction issues grow. So we really want to get down and tap into that really deep belief about who I am. So don't be shy in this area. Put it in there. Really add that deep, deep feeling about who you are. And then we add, well, what is my fear about this self-esteem? Well, my fear is I'm not worthy of the truth. I'm not able to handle the truth. So each column goes with number one is the self-esteem. We do the I am an honest person. And then the fear. This is all related to number one, self-esteem. So it's not what is my general basic fears in life. It's what is my fear around my self-esteem, what this person did to me. This is a made up story, but I'll say it like it's mine. And then we'll go down to each one. My pride. This is how I want people to see me being treated. Okay, so let's say I'm up in front of a bunch of people at a wedding, and this person, Drew, is with me, and I want them all to see him treating me like I'm cherished and loved and respected, and he's supportive, and I'm deserving, and I'm just this loving wife. But my fear is others might not see it that way. They might see the effect that the lying has had on me. I have this fear that I'm oppressed, and all these things have gone on. So we want to list them. Number two, my pride, how others should see me, because we're talking about my pride, and my fear about how I feel about my pride. So we go down the columns and we answer them in order. When we get down to the pocketbook part, the cost, the wallet, whatever you want to call it, this is about what interference has come about from this resentment. Emotional security, well, yeah, he lies and, manipulates, so I don't feel emotionally secure. My well-being is not what it could be because I walk around in this horrible state of mind. It's affected my spirituality. I've lost faith in my higher power. I don't have faith in relationships because this relationship is bad. His lying and manipulating, he took money and hid it or spent it on things I didn't know about. So it affects a lot of different things. Now, if you have a resentment and it doesn't affect all those things, you don't have to come up with answers to fit the resentment. It's only when it actually you feel an impact from the event of the resentment. So then this is a sample of column 4 now, the same person. This is when we go on to the next half of the worksheet work. We start with the same person. It's Drew. We know the offense. He lies, manipulates for his own ego. So then we have these 4 categories on the left, 1 through 4. Self-seeking, selfish, dishonest, and frightened. So now we're looking at ourselves in this resentment. Things I do when I feel this resentment. So this is self-seeking. It's an action. How do you behave today with this resentment? Well, I shut down emotionally. I plan an escape. I grill and question him, and I manipulate the outcomes. Those are all about me, all about my ego, self-seeking behavior, and it's an action. Then we go down to the next one, number 2, selfish, self-centered thinking, selfish thoughts, attitudes, motives. When I'm feeling this resentment, well, I deserve better than him. He lies because he's afraid of me. He isn't on my level of honesty. Why can't he treat me like I treat him? All these thoughts about me, all related to this resentment. Then we go down to number 3, dishonest and delusional. How am I misrepresenting myself or my reality by lying, omitting, or diluting when I feel this resentment? Well, I freeze and I don't confront. That's dishonesty. I tell myself I'm wrong. That's delusional. I remind myself he is not capable of telling the truth. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. He has an addiction, so it is okay. It is part of the disease. That's delusional thinking, and it's pretty dishonest. That's how we fill it out, lies and delusions on our part. Number 4, afraid, fear of not getting what I want or losing what I have. What fear comes up when I think about this resentment? All right, so now I'm in a frightened state. I'm afraid nothing is true. He is not capable of being honest. I will never get out from under the abuse. If I confront, he may walk away. I'm afraid I'm not in control. So those are all the fearful feelings and thoughts I have around the resentment of his own ego craziness. And then we can go down and we also can check off, okay, when we get to the harms, let me do the responsible part. So where am I accountable or responsible for my feelings and reactions when I feel this resentment? Now, this one really grabs people and shakes them because they think, how am I responsible when someone else is the problem? Well, if I am doubting myself and I don't confront his lies, I'm leaving a big space there of accountability. I'm accountable to confront the words that don't sit well with me. And when I don't address them, they seem like they go along with whatever this person's saying. So now that this has morphed into something bigger from the original event, currently now I look the other way. I choose which lies to address and I let others go. So I'm a little more responsible, but I'm not 100% responsible, but it's better than it was. What harm did I cause this person? Again, we're thinking, how have I caused the person who I have a resentment towards? What is the actual negative impact of my resentful actions towards this person? And we pick the ones that apply. Well, my emotions, my financial, and my mental attitude. And I probably would check off spiritual at this point too, because it leaves me feeling not so trustworthy in other people or even a higher power. When we get to the defects, this is another spot that people don't get. This is the defects around this particular resentment. So you don't have to list all the defects you've ever had in your life. It's around this particular resentment. So for me, in this relationship with Drew, my defects that keep this resentment going are I'm a codependent, I'm a fearful person, I have no faith, I'm controlling and I'm dishonest, and I'm often delusional about this person. Those all relate to what's going on within this resentment between this person and myself, not what's going on anywhere else. Why do I hold on to this resentment? This is a tough question for a lot of people. I hold on to remind me that he is a liar and that I have to be on guard to his lies and how they affect me and call him out now because I let it go before. I need to be hyper vigilant and aware. So when we hold on to a resentment, if you can't find the answer as to why, think about the benefits that you're getting out of it. Meaning we don't ruffle the feathers because something's going the way we need it to go. So we put up with whatever the resentment is. So for this person to hold on to this resentment could be a form of retaliation. It could be a form of making the person feel less than, but it's definitely this person in a sense getting back at the other person for having the qualities that they have. So that would be a reason to hold on. When we get to the real role, in holding on to this resentment and negative feelings, I am manipulating him and undervaluing and underloving myself through my lying about the real events that I want to deny. And it often sounds very similar to what we're blaming the person we have the resentment towards. I've yet to find anyone do my real role and come up with something completely different than what they're holding the other person accountable for. So if you get stuck on that one, I'm more than happy to help, because the real role it's really hard, because this is where we have to admit that we're the problem, that we're the reason we're suffering, especially when you look at resentments that can be 10, 20, 30, 40 years old. And we're blaming the event that happened all those decades ago for our feelings that we have today. And as long as we keep that blame outside of ourselves and not bring it inside, we're never going to get rid of the resentment. It is not resolvable until we look at our own contribution to the whole thing. Now, this doesn't excuse the initial event. An event did happen, but we're carrying it way beyond its need to be carried. And another point I want to make is if you've got a resentment that happened in your childhood from abuse or whatever trauma you might have gone through, children are not responsible for adults' behaviors. You can still have a resentment, but the blame is not going to be the same as it is from an adult's perspective. So that means, for instance, if a child has physical abuse and they resent their parent for it, but they grow up and they're still walking around with an addiction and blaming their parents for it, they've got to turn that around and look at, themselves to see that they're the ones that are actually carrying it. When we can see that it's ourselves, we can finally let the resentment go and all of the crap that goes with it, especially the addiction part. So on page 67, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory is ours, not the other person's. When we saw our own faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we were willing to set these matters straight. And the sick man's prayer is used in recovery to help release our resentments. So instead of focusing on how someone has wronged us, this prayer shifts perspective from anger to understanding, from retaliation to tolerance, from resentment to compassion, and from the ego to spiritual reliance. It reminds us that resentment harms us more than anyone else, and that freedom comes from changing our response to reality. And that concludes the PowerPoint. So I hope you guys have lots of great questions. Or maybe you're getting along great and this is, working fine for you. That's wonderful too. I hope that's the case. But if not, raise your hand and we can try to clear some stuff up. Or we can even, if somebody wants to read their third column or fourth column.
Okay, yeah. I did fill out a third column about a sibling. And so let's see,
Nice.
where are you? Okay. when I resent M for cutting, thoughtless, joking comments. Did it hurt, threaten, or interfere with my? Okay, so I wrote down it interfered with my sleep and my peace of mind and my family harmony. And the fear uh, was that this person has resentments towards me and my husband.
Okay.
Um, Self esteem, the deep belief about who I am, a thoughtful, loving, a concerned older sister. And how do I want this other people to see me being treated? Okay. Treated with love and sensitivity. Ambition, what do I want to happen? And this would be to the offender. Well, for one thing, for that person to get into 12 step and not be so close minded and intense. Security, what do I need in order to be okay and why? I need to get along with my sibling, not to be estranged, because I do love my sibling. And uh, hmm, I can't read my writing, something about health. Um, okay, personal relations, and I expect siblings to get along and enjoy each other's company. And as sex relation, the ideal person, man, loving, respectful of the others and their political beliefs. And the wallet is just my emotional well-being. The fears up on two were that we won't have a close family and able to spend time together harmoniously. The ambition part about that person getting into 12 step, the fear is that that will not happen. And uh, the fear of security is there is a tension in the relationship. I haven't gone on to the fourth column yet.
Okay. So tell me again what the offense is.
Well, this would be telling a story, but the offense was when my husband fell off his bike and broke his elbow. This was a year ago. And then this person made a comment about, well, that's what happened to Biden. He fell off his bike, you know. And it was kind of put into, it was kind of a cutting comment, both, like, this is pretty serious. You break your elbow, but uh, also getting the dig in about the president, the other president.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right.
because there's
So,
that dynamic going on too. Both my siblings are conservative, so.
okay. So there's a couple
Mhm.
of issues going on here, maybe. Is some of it a political
Mm-hmm.
issue?
It's something that, for pretty much years, we get together, we have fun, we have a lot of things to talk about because we have a lot of history. We don't go to the politics and we don't go to religion, you know. And I don't, uh, bring up the drinking, things like that. So,
Okay. So the drinking part of it, is that a separate resentment or is it the actual resentment?
um, you know, uh, it's hard for me to be resentful about a person's drinking, because I know they can't, it's an addiction. But
Not not maybe necessarily the disease of drinking, but the
mhm,
behaviors.
yeah.
There could be, you can have resentment towards the way they behave, and it might be a product of alcoholism, but you
hmm
don't have to be resentful towards alcoholism per se, but it would be against the way they behave.
hmm Yeah, it just seems like it's a progressive thing of, you know, I used to enjoy this person's sense of humor, but it just seems to be now it's mean and, it's, meant to be. I don't know if it's just thoughtless disregard for people's feelings or what, but it causes dissent and, we don't need any more,
Nobody does. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Well, I'm just asking you a few questions, Anita, because I think you did a great job, but I think you can go a little deeper than you did.
Hmm.
And I think if you get it a little bit deeper, you're going to get more out of it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it
you
gets,
know,
yeah.
so, and I did hear a couple of things come up about potentially, it being related to alcoholic behaviors.
Hmm.
So it might be, we might want to focus or pinpoint more in that area to get
Hmm.
a little bit more specific.
Okay. More thinking and more, you
Little,
know.
yeah, yeah. Just to, you're only on the third column, so it's not you get to go through and do both worksheets over or whatever. But I think that if you were to get to the next level with
Mhm.
it, you're going to get that much more out of it recovery wise. You'll be, it'll be that much easier to eliminate the resentment because the more succinct we are and the more accurate we are about the resentment, the more we remove it. So when we have a resentment that's not real crisp and crystal clear, the stuff keeps kind of happening and we got to come up with another worksheet. We do another worksheet.
Mm.
And I tend to like to do things fast and furious and not have to do them twice. So that's when I see it, I say, okay, how can I help Anita do this one deeper for a bigger bang for your buck?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I would give it some thought. I maybe I'm totally off base here and you feel completely fine with this, but my suggestion is maybe just go a little deeper.
I definitely will try.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, it's taken me a while to even realize that I have some resentments,
Yes. Yes.
and being precise and, you know, not being vague. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a goal. It's being vague and fuzzy thinking is one of my defects, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And along with people pleasing and not wanting to make waves.
And that is a factor when we're codependent and we've got
Mhm.
all these issues around people when it comes time to do this work because we're
Mhm.
working on what we think are other people, it's harder for us
Mhm.
because we're so used to lying and saying everything's wonderful and catering to whatever behaviors they display.
Mhm.
So it is a little bit harder.
Yes.
But if you can muster the strength to do the little bit harder work,
Mhm.
you're going to get more of it away from you and out of your life.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, I have a step 3 and step 4. I'll count 3 beliefs. When I resent Ariel, she's my twin sister, for telling me about her research on ailments and suggesting that I have the same problem and I should do research as well. What is my deep belief about who I am? I'm an intelligent adult and I don't want or need her advice. And my fear is that she's smarter than I am. Pride. How do I want other people to see me being treated? Put myself on a stage. Others should see Ariel seeking and treating me, or seeking my advice and counsel on all matters. Ambition. What do I want to happen? I want Ariel to acknowledge that I am brighter than her. My fear is that she thinks she is and maybe is brighter than me. Security. Security. What do I need in order to be okay and why? I need Ariel to ask me for my advice. Why? Because that would prove that she thinks and that I think I am smart. My feeling is I don't know anything. I'm not smart at all. Personal relations. How do I expect this relationship should be? I expect sisters to be supportive and respectful. And my fear is sisters are not supportive and they're not respectful. Sex. What is my belief about men? Men should always be loving, supportive, and respectful. My fear is men are not loving, supportive, and respectful, and that's the same thing for women. Same characteristics. And pocketbooks. Nothing should interfere with or affect or lessen my emotional security and well-being. And my fear is that everything interferes with my emotional security and well-being. Absolutely everything. Okay. So here's my column 4. When I resent Ariel for telling me about her research and ailments and making suggestions to me, my perceived role is I am a misunderstood and abused sister. Did this event really happen? Yes, it did. Self-seeking. When I feel this resentment, I badmouth her to my husband and other people as well. Selfish, thinking about myself. I think I'm a kinder person when I feel this resentment. Kinder. Maybe not smarter, but kinder. And dishonest. I misrepresent myself by posing as a know-it-all when I don't know it all. Afraid. When I have this resentment, I feel she has a better life than me. That's a delusion. When, my current reaction. My contribution is to oh no, let's see. I am wrong at fault for my feelings behavior. When I feel this resentment, my contribution is to dismiss her. My current reaction is to understand Ariel and to understand that I do the exact same thing that she does. And I'm judgmental of her and not judgmental of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What harm did I cause her? Well, when I badmouth her, I shouldn't do that. That's causing harm. What harm did I cause other people? I bombarded my husband with angry statements about her, and he doesn't appreciate it. List any fears. Fears because fear of women, fear of men. No. Why do I hold on this resentment? I can blame her. I don't have to feel responsible for my own failures. I hold on to it so I can blame her, and I don't have to take responsibility for my negative behavior. And I realize I'm really not an abused sister. I abuse myself. Those are my thoughts. They're not her thoughts. I'm projecting my thoughts onto her. And also, there's another reality, and that is that I actually am abusive to her because I dismiss her and speak badly about her. So, and I want to tell everybody that once you do these sheets, it's hard, it's embarrassing, you don't want to do it, but there is such freedom on the other side. There really is. I had such horrible anger at my sister, and I don't have it anymore.
And you made that whole process look awfully easy.
Well, I've done so many of these. That's the only reason. I've had a lot of practice with these. I've done
On her sister.
on my.
Yeah.
This is a mosquito bite. This is an annoyance, but I've had deep resentment, and I've worked on it for, 2 years. I've worked.
Yeah. And I'm really grateful that you're explaining all that to people, because a lot of people go into this feeling very overwhelmed and
Right.
even a little frightened about doing them. It's
Absolutely. I did too. The first time I did this, oh gosh, it was awful. But the more you do it, the more practice you have, the easier it is, and you get that freedom.
yes. Yes.
It's
And
wonderful.
basically what Carol's saying is she knows the key. There is a key to all of this. And when it clicks in your head, you'll just stop pumping these out and the resentments will just poof, they're going away.
Right.
It really does get to that place.
I am a compulsive person. First of all, I want to say I'm I'm amazed at my higher power, because the power went out this afternoon around 3 o'clock. And just 5 minutes into the meeting, it came back on.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm not going to be able to go to the meeting. This is where I can get anxious. And I like what you were saying about ego. I'm reminded of program terminology. People say ego is easing God out.
Yes.
And that's what I can do very quickly. Um, and so I did do the one of the parts of the fourth step, but I did it about myself. And I don't necessarily want to share that, but I had two questions. And that was I heard talking about going deeper into what we write. And I just wondered if you could suggest some questions that would help me go deeper into that. That's number one. And two, is there a way that we can, or I can access, maybe everybody already knows this, so I apologize, but can we access the paperwork and the presentations that are being taped? Is there any way we can access those to hear those and review it? And if I
Yes.
could access the paperwork so I could
Yep.
print it.
So everything that you're questioning is on the website. The workbook is on there. There's a guidebook on there, and my link to all the videos is on there. So everything you could ever need will be on there. So if you're looking for something, you can always go there.
Okay.
And the videos are going to be from our last workshop and this current one. So there's going to be some that are going to be
Kind of a
repeating.
combination. Okay.
Yeah. And
And
then
what deeper questions?
so one of the things maybe that will help you is, I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but there's some sample sheets that are filled out with the questions and answers to give you an idea of what you could be looking at. But one of the things you want to ask yourself is, can I get more specific on an answer that I'm giving? Instead of saying, let me think. So self-seeking behavior. So let's say I just say, I I don't do a whole lot. I just hang out with myself or something. I would say to myself, no, I need to go deeper. What do you really do? What do you honestly do when you're feeling this resentment? And it's around that feeling of you're just trying to self-seek about yourself. What could it be that's more accurate? So with the Drew one, the example I gave, we put I shut down emotionally, I plan my escape, I grill and question him, I try to manipulate the outcomes of other people. One of the things that you can do, it's a little more work, is you could take one of the sheets, and there is one on the website, of our character defects. And you could look at the self-seeking question and you could say, do any of these character defects apply to what I'm actually doing? And once you grasp that character defect, you could then translate it into your personal experience with that character defect in the resentment.
Okay.
Does that make
Thank you.
sense?
It does.
It sounds
Thank
a little
you.
more like complicated and a little more work, but it's going to give you a deeper, stronger answer because you're actually we're going through character defects as we do this work. That's actually what we're doing. So when we have an idea of our basic character defects, which if you sit down and give it some thought, we all kind of know what our main character defects are. We know where we screw up. But if you don't, and you see a list, and I think there's probably 100 character defects on the sheet I put out there. You see the ones that apply to this particular resentment that you're working through, and you say, "Oh wow, I forgot. I'm very manipulative person. I'm a control freak. I'm a people pleaser. I'm fearful a lot of the times." And then you can say, "Okay, so how does that fit in to what I'm doing around this resentment?"
Well, one of my core issues that actually I was literally talking with a counselor today was I was present for someone being abused, sexually abused, and the abuser threatened both of us that if we tell, I think I was 10 and she was 13, and the abuser threatened to kill us and then said no one would believe us anyway. So I know it's going to sound weird, but it's like a CD, I shoved it into my head and then never thought about it again until
Yep.
a couple of years ago when it all came popping out.
Yep.
And my counselor said that's your underlying issue. And I realized today we're talking about this that I have carried that as my shame and my lack of value and whatever my entire life.
Yeah.
And so I just want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
I feel
And
uncomfortable even talking about it because it sounds like Mary, you're 72, get over it. But
yeah, but
it's
we push them down really deep. You know,
yeah.
but we bury them alive.
Mm.
We can bury those emotions, but we bury them alive, meaning at some point, somewhere, they're going to come out. And then we have to deal with them decades later, decades.
And
And,
this writing could help with that, I suspect.
absolutely. Because what happens is we have this event, this abusive event, and it invokes feelings and emotions and behaviors and all kinds of stuff. But we've shoved it down. We think we've shoved it down. But then we start having issues with shame around a lot of things. And shame becomes one of our main character descriptions before we realize it's a character defect. So what we're doing with the resentment work is we're not trying to eliminate the event. That's never the purpose. The purpose is to eliminate the shame. And that's the focus. The shame around the event that happened that is now replaying over and over again in your life. And that's the burying it alive part. That's how an emotion shows up everywhere else alive. Because the shame happened, but you were 10 years old. You didn't know how to deal with it. And you didn't know how to talk about it because we were trained that you do whatever an adult tells you. And if somebody says you don't tell anyone, you didn't. Because we were children. So the shame gets buried. The circumstances become almost not important because it's now all about shame. It's not about this event happened and I'm re-experiencing the event every day. I'm experiencing the effect that the event had on me. And that effect was shame. And whether it was shame that something you saw, or it could have been shame later on in life, realizing it happened and not speaking to somebody about it, there could be shame from that. So there's different branches of the shame that go on. And when somebody says, like a counselor says, well, this is your main issue, what that means is not that that event happened, but that it created this tremendous amount of shame within you that's not even proportionate to the original event. The original event would have carried shame that would last for a certain amount of time. But to have shame over an event for decades, it's not appropriate anymore. And it's only causing you more pain. So we don't discount that the event happened and it had an effect on you. What we're addressing is the effect that you carried every day around with you that affected every other issue in your life.
And then I can get into feeling bad about myself for having been ashamed because I should have smartened up. And I want to be careful of that because
Yeah, that's
it,
just
it
double duty. Yeah.
Yeah. And I recognize that. So
Yeah.
thank you. I'll
You're
look up that
welcome.
information.
You're welcome.
only did I only did three, so in some ways that's one of the main reasons I'm open to kind of like sharing this. But I only did three. I did it on someone I mentioned earlier. I did it on my father. I didn't do two. I just did like three. So I looked at the fears, and then I started the. I think it's like the section. Really, hold on a second. Sorry. It's the section where you go through and this is how I should be, this and that. And I don't know, quote unquote, if I got it right, but I think I did a better job. Hold on a second. I did a better job than I did last time.
Okay.
But we'll see. And it's a different resentment. It's not the same one so for example, I did column three. So when I resent my father and I wrote and I was struggling to come up with different ideas, but unfortunately, because I have a very close relationship with him, I get new ones every week. Unfortunately,
Right.
so um, so one of the things that I wrote was like not recognizing how great a son I am. And so my self-esteem, my deep belief is that I am, like I don't know, I really pushed it with the ego, but my deepest belief is that I'm the greatest man who's ever lived, and that many of the greatest men who have ever lived are in my bloodline among my ancestors, and I believe I am truly great. Um, and two, pride. I want people to see me receiving applause. I want them to see me wearing a crown like many of my ancestors did. I want them to see me being honored, respected, and rewarded with great wealth. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
So when you're doing that one, others should see all those things coming from your dad.
got it. Got
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I didn't get that, but okay. 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 Ambition. I want my father to recognize how great I am and treat me accordingly. Security. I need my father to treat me well and respect me as a man so that I am not tempted to respond with anger and curse him out when he becomes verbally abusive, narcissistic, or acts out during conversation. Um, Number five, personal relations. I expect my father to be supportive, encouraging, respectful, patient, and not verbally abusive. Number six, a real father should always be supportive, doting, respectful, and patient. Number seven, this affects my bank account, my retirement account, which he's on my retirement account. I'm I've been getting part of my trust actually as like a gift because of my recovery that I'm here to get better. It's something that I got as soon as I started like working. I can't, yeah. So I have access to my trust now. Whether my car will be paid or not, he wants to help me pay off my car. And how much money I have available currently since I lost my job. Um, so let me see. What is the fear regarding 1 through 7? That I'll never reach my full potential or accomplish anything truly great. Uh, and that would be linked, I believe, to my self-esteem.
Okay.
Two, people will never applaud me, recognize me, see me as a leader, or respect me because the stuff that I listed for pride is not correct. Um, Three, I will never reach my potential financially or romantically. I'll just be, continuing this nonsense with my family. Four, I will always be disrespected and always have a strained relationship with my father. Five, my father will never recognize, support, or really respect me. I mean, like emotionally, that's what I mean. Um, and six, fathers will never be supportive, patient, respectful figures they should be. I used AI to transcribe it, so some of the stuff it changed some of the stuff that I said.
Yeah, and be careful with AI because it does not incorporate feelings.
Yeah, it got down most of what I
Yeah,
did, but it didn't like the last year I'm reading it changed what I said.
right.
My seven, my finances, retirement, transportation, food security, and long term stability will suffer. Um, yeah, I don't remember what I wrote originally. It changed it, but that's what I have. I spent a little bit on it, but yeah, so that's what I had. I did another one, but we're completely out of time, and so yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
And you did a great job. It's all very succinct. It makes sense. Um, other than that one part where you add your dad's name in there, I think you did great.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah, good job, Mark.
thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions? All right. So
I
keep
had, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Joel.
I had my hand up, but I took it down.
That's fine.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
No.
No? You just wanted to
No.
raise your hand.
No, I had one that I wanted to go over, but then I thought better of it.
Why?
Too personal, hurts too much.
Oh, it's painful.
Yeah,
Okay. Why
very
don't you
painful.
try looking at it, go run through it a couple times this week, and maybe you'll be able to share it next week. Take the sting out of it.
The only the thing about it is I don't know whether I'm uh answering the questions right or in the right direction. But I've only done well, there aren't that many things that I still hold as resentments because it has to be something that currently hurts. And I resolved the last time we did this without going into as much depth as we did this, as we're doing this time, or as I'm trying to do this time. I was able to resolve in my own head my own complicity or my own contribution to the problems that were there. And so I got rid of a lot of things that up until last year, when we did this last year,
Yep.
were bothering me. And there are a bunch of things that I dropped and that I don't consider as important anymore. I mean, maybe they have a little bit of, a little bit of residual hurt or disappointment or whatever it is, but they don't ache the way that they did because I understand that I have a part in everything I do or everything that happens to me. And I get the big message. But these things that I'm doing now are still obviously very raw. And so yeah, I don't know if I want to talk about them, with a lot of people. Not that I believe me, I care about all of you folks in there, but this stuff is like really, you know.
Yeah. So give it some time. Read through it a couple times and see how you feel. And if you feel safe or you feel secure in your answers or whatever it is, and then you can decide. You don't ever have to share it.
No, it's not that. The only reason why I'm thinking about it is because I don't know whether I'm answering the questions properly. I haven't really gone through the process before, other than in my head. So answering the questions in a specific way, is what I'm thinking about. Because I mean, hearing the conversations that you had with the folks that came before me, there are certain ways of doing it, and I don't know if I'm doing it the right way. So what I'm going to do is, I guess I'm going to hone it, and maybe I'll share it. If not, I'll share something else.
So anyone that wants to unmute and join me in the serenity prayer. God, please grant us the serenity to accept the
Accept the
things
things we
we
cannot
cannot
change.
change, the courage
To
to change
change the
the
things we
things we
can.
can, and the wisdom
Wisdom to know the
to know the
difference.
difference.
know the difference.
Thanks for all your help, Lisa.
Great, great work, everyone. Great work.
Thank
Really
you.
vulnerable, very vulnerable, but
Thank you.
this is where the solution is.
Yeah. See you, Lisa. See you,
Yeah.
everybody. Have a nice week.
Everybody have a great week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.